Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. As always, I am Joel A. Erickson, joined by Nate Atkins. We are home. We are in our respective abodes from the Colts win over the Steelers today, 27-24. That's the right score, right? It feels like a lot of things happened that weren't even the score.
It is the right score.
I was going to start here. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to get into with Anthony Richardson. That's obviously the biggest storyline. We're going to talk so much about it though in the categories. And I want to start with this. The Colts are 2-2, and they've got a real chance here. Like I know where they're. Trust me, I know where they're going next week. We all know that I know where they're going next week and don't like it. But after that, they have games against Tennessee and Miami, who doesn't have a quarterback at this point. With apologies to Snoop Huntley. Um, this is a chance now for the Colts to really do something going forward that maybe after week 2, I don't know if anybody saw coming. Or at the very least, they were skeptical about it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they've gotten their season back on track for now. Obviously, we'll see whether it goes off the rails or if it stays on the track, and Jacksonville will be a test of that. But 2 straight wins against two home games, 2 opportunities they had to go out there and prove a few things they had to prove. Number one was fixing that run defense. Second straight week where that was a lot better, and then figuring out the solutions to their offense where they can be more than just a touchdown or a 3-and-out or a pick type of team. Today, I thought was the biggest step they've made toward that for a variety of reasons. We'll get into these categories, but at least for now, I mean, they look like they're in it. Like they're a flawed team, and we often focus on the flaws. But I think when you look around the NFL, there's just a lot of flawed teams out there. And I think even the Steelers were a good example of that. They were a 3-0 team. They didn't look like a 3-0 type of team out there, though. They look like a team that maybe they've been kind of getting by against other teams that have some issues. So there's a lot of winnable games left on the schedule, especially coming up. The schedule will get pretty darn hard after that Tennessee game, or after the Miami game, I should say. But that's where you got to start banking some of these wins. You got to start building an identity. And I think today, even though they had to play 2 quarterbacks, and there's a big conversation with that, today was the best I've felt about what their offense can be on a more consistent basis. Because one thing you got to give the Steelers credit for is they have a very legitimate defense, a defense that has done this at a high level for a number of years. Players that play well together, guys who've been in the same scheme. They're off to a great start this season. So this was, after week 2 in Green Bay is about as low as we could be on their offense and them as a team. I think while they still have a lot of things to figure out, today was kind of the best note for them on offense, given everything that they had to deal with.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially just the Steelers were giving up like 8 points a game, and we'll probably get into a little bit of just how the offense kind of went in the tank there for a little bit in the middle of the game, and what that means or might mean or doesn't mean. But for the most part, they took it to them for the first 3 drives before Richardson got hurt. One other thing to think about, I think, as we get into this, before we, really lock into where what's going on with the categories. There are, by my count, and this is before the Sunday night. We're taping this as the Sunday night game is getting started between the Ravens and the Bills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 teams that are 2-2 with 3 more games to go this week. Mm-hmm. You always hear about parity in the NFL. That's kind of what you're referring to right there. There's opportunity for just about everybody in a league where so many teams are in the middle of the pack right now. So we'll get into the categories. Colts win 27-24. As always, we start not always, because sometimes they lose and we start with the villain of the game. But when they win, we start with the hero of the game. Nate, your hero of today's game.
I'm going to give it to two players, two Colts wide receivers. I'm going to split this between Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. It's possible you could just name one the hero and one the unsung hero, but to me, they're very hard to separate from this performance because those are the two primarily who they were kind of wearing a lot of the pass to improvement for this passing game. So of course, all the conversation has been how Anthony Richardson hasn't been accurate. He's been turning it over. They're at 49% completion rate. And we keep saying in this podcast that some of that is going to happen with a young quarterback. He's not going to be this super accurate, consistent passer yet. It's other guys, though, who have done this before, played at a better level that had to raise their games. And Downs, he'd only played one game so far, but it was really slow, 22 yards against the Bears. And then Michael Pittman had just really not gotten going at all. Had less than 100 yards coming into the game. And so when teams are just throwing a ton of zone coverage at them, they're pretty much daring them to make plays in these zones that are pretty open right now as they try to cover for the deep ball. But that's what those two had to put this on their shoulders. And I thought they did it in two ways that complemented each other brilliantly. So Michael Pittman had 6 catches for 113 yards. And Josh Downs had 8 catches, 82 yards, and a touchdown. So Pittman ended up being a little bit more of the explosive player. He had 2 fewer catches than Downs, but like 31 more yards. He had that big explosive catch on the first drive that I thought that drive set the tone for everything for this game, where they finally could do the thing that they always say they want to do, which is play from in front. That explosive play from Pittman kind of helped get that drive going and set the tone of the day. So they got explosiveness consistently from Pittman, kind of these deep downfield completions. And then Downs was I thought he was the more clutch player when they really had to have something. So 2 different third down plays. They go to Steelers go to man coverage when they're normally throwing cover 3 at them. Josh Downs is able to read it and then lock into a matchup on a nickel corner and just flat out win. Like he just had to win those downs. And one of them, a little pun there on Downs, but one of them, he lays out for the catch, the one that they reviewed, just a gorgeous laying out of the catch. It was reminiscent. That's I think his best trait is the way he can lay out and time up these catches, reminiscent of the third down catch he had against the Patriots last year like that. So that was one. And then he had, there was another third down where he put the nickel corner on skates to get the first down. That led to a field goal that let them go up 10. And then, he had that touchdown when the Colts really needed one, and their offense had really frozen, but they got down there. They had a red zone opportunity, and he just went and diced them up on a whip route. So I'm split it between them just because I thought that tandem was the whole story today, where the Steelers, once Anthony Richardson got hurt, were able to just send everybody after Jonathan Taylor, more or less take Jonathan Taylor out of the game. Joe Flacco is a backup quarterback. Again, like with a young quarterback in Anthony or a backup in Joe Flacco, other guys have to kind of raise the floor for these quarterbacks right now. And so I thought the two of them combined to do that. And that was the one thing I was hanging on to for this team, especially on offense, is why I thought there was a lot more upside, is I just didn't think that we would go that many weeks without those two getting going the way that they got going last season. And for them to both get going in the same game, I think that's the number one reason they won today.
Yeah, my hero of the game is going to be tied to that. One, Joseph Vincent Flacco entered the game instead of Richardson. We're going to get to a little bit of something, unlike the running back, but I'll lead into it now. Unlike the running back position where they went out and got somebody when they lost last year's backup, the Colts actually addressed their backup quarterback situation and went and got Flacco. A little bit of a different kind of game from him. So when they got Flacco, the thought was this is a guy who is going to push the ball down the field, sort of a damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead type of thrower. That's what he was with the Browns last year. Now, with that, there is the penchant and possibility of some interceptions. Go back and look at the Browns numbers last year. You'll see it. He really wasn't that guy today. When he tried to throw deep, it was a little bit off. I thought he was a little bit underthrown on a couple. almost threw a pick to Joey Porter. But other than that, he was more of like the efficient underneath thrower. 16 to 26, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He only averaged 6.5 yards per attempt. And realistically, the completion percentage, 61.5, it's not that great. But more than anything, he didn't make a mistake, and he navigated the pocket well. He did exactly what they needed to do. He played more like the way you sort of expect the backup to play and kind of manage the game than maybe the way he played last year with the Browns when it was clear he was going to be the guy going downfield. Now, obviously, Pittman and Downs are a big part of that. Downs probably more so than Pittman, because Pittman had 2 big catches for 60 yards before Richardson went out. But those guys obviously played a big role in that. But just you got to have a good backup quarterback. We've seen it around the league already this year. Some teams are where they are because of the backup quarterback. Looking at you, Green Bay, some of them are out of it. It feels like because of where they are. We'll see what happens to the Dolphins tomorrow night. But yeah, you got to have a good backup. Whatever happens with Richardson going forward, Flacco showed what he can do when he gets in there. So for that, he's the hero of the game for me.
Yeah, just really smooth work from Joe Flacco. Like he says, different than what we've known before, where he's a big-time risk taker. This is kind of like he understood the moment, too. It's this specific situation he stepped into, is when they were finishing off a drive to go up 14-0, and then he's back out and Anthony's in. But then all of a sudden, like they're in a position to go up 17-0, and it was like you can't commit the losing plays. And so – But when they started to suffocate the run, take Jonathan Taylor out of it, like he had to create some plays too. So it was like finding that balance between, getting the ball somewhat down the field without taking a lot of risks. And there's only one play I counted that I thought was really, really risky from him. It was a throw into the end zone that could have been a pick. It was dropped. But other than that, I think he the way he laid it out is what happened. He said, you just got to throw to open guys. And they were getting guys open. The Colts did a great job of scheming guys open. It was another showcase of how all the zone coverage they're seeing, like there are open lanes here. And it was like, he just didn't overthink it. So he did the thing we're trying to see if Anthony will do, which is, hit more of the layups. That to me is what felt a lot different. He was 16 of 26. And when they had to have some decently tight window throws, beating man coverage to Josh Downs or Michael Pittman Jr., he delivered again and again. So it was the thing that was really telling to me was like just hearing guys talk about him after the game. Like Josh Downs scored that touchdown and DJ Montgomery ran up to him and was hyping him up about the fact that he just caught a touchdown from the Super Bowl winning quarterback. And like the calm that they have when he steps into the game it makes you feel really good when there's a lot of depth on this team that is very concerning. That I'm sure we'll get to. Like you mentioned, running back is one of those spots. It's not like a hope. That's not like a hope. We hope this guy can come in and do something that he hasn't really done. You just want Joe Flacco to be Joe Flacco. That's what he was, maybe in a different style today, but in terms of stepping in, knowing the moment, and fitting the team and fitting the situation, that was what you asked for out of a backup, and it shows you why you invest in one like that.
We'll move on now to the villain of the game. Villain of the game. I'm trying to find the right villain of the game today. This is just a little behind the scenes type of thing. I'm the pool reporter for Indianapolis, which means that if there's something to ask the referees, it's up to me. Now, again, we've said this on this podcast before. I cannot ask about every holding call you saw missed. That's not how it works. It's actually it's really, really annoying. This is going to be a little bit of a diatribe, but that's fine. Maybe this is my unsung villain, and we'll just get it out of the way. But it's really annoying how difficult the process is. It takes a long time to get the setup for it, and then they don't really answer the questions. But anyway, because of some of the hits early on, a hit on Anthony Richardson when he came back in, a hit with Isaiah Land, we wanted to talk to the refs. There was some stuff that I missed. I'm just going to be honest. There was some stuff I missed from from the game while I was working. Same thing with writing some injury updates. But I think where I'm going to go here is Jalen Jones, just not a good game. It felt like after a really good game last week where he has the 2 picks. It felt like there were a lot of chances for him where I saw him either missing tackles, missing plays on the ball. I don't know. He felt like he took a step forward last week, and then this week it felt like we saw a lot of what we saw the first 2 weeks of the season. Is that fair?
Yeah, it was another game where it was more like what we saw before last week, where it's tough. He's drawing the assignment with Juju Brents out, the assignment of a team's number one, and it's what he did a little bit last year when Juju Brents was out, and today it was George Pickens, and Pickens won most of those matchups in terms of getting open and making plays. He had 7 catches for 113 yards. Now the Colts won the game, and they kept Fields only threw 1 touchdown pass, but Nick Cross kind of saved Jalen Jones from a really pretty tough moment when he lost George Pickens along the sideline, close in the red zone, getting close to score, and Nick Cross kind of jumps over the top and George Pickens and forces that fumble out, and they get the ball back. But this game could have turned a different way. The only way they were going to lose this game is if the defense, maybe not the only way, but it was defense wilting down the stretch. And so they finally made the plays, mostly with the pass rush to close this out. But Jalen Jones, it just goes to show you that it's a volatile nature to the position he's in, the stage he is at his career, where he did have an amazing game and he earned AFC Defensive Player of the Week last week. And it was fully deserved. He balled out. But while that's great progress, while that's a confidence boost for him, it doesn't mean that now he's just settled, secure, easy man cover type, player. He's a young player who's going to have ups and downs, and today was mostly another down for him that they were able to survive. So for my villain, because like you said, it is a kind of weird game to go after a villain. There wasn't really a standout like this person or player is messing something up. So I'm going to go with the guy who wanted to be the villain today, which is Najee Harris. Najee Harris came out. There's a photo of him flipping off the cameras as he's running out into the stadium. Something was going on with Najee. We're not down there to know exactly what's being said, but I just noticed Colts players really wanted to take it to him today. I noticed one moment he ran out of bounds and Julian Blackmon hip checked him just to sort of add a little bit of emphasis to what's going on. And then after the game, Zaire Franklin came out and quote tweeted something about Najee Harris and said, "Kid is soft, 84 runs harder." That's about as insulting as it gets for a running back to say that he is soft. But Najee Harris, he took on this villain role of, these for each week so far, outside of last week when the Colts beat the Bears, but the first 2 weeks, as we know, teams ran all over the Colts, and there were players that came out after the game, both of those games, and really had things to say, and we're kind of making fun of the Colts for being soft and easy to run on, their version of saying soft. Stephon Diggs and Jair Alexander both made references to that. And I remember I asked Zaire Franklin about that, and he caught himself and didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it seemed like something that he's been thinking about it, these people have been able to spout off on us. And he talked about how he wanted to turn this all around. Well, today they did that against Najee Harris. Now, they lost Justin Fields, and Cordarrelle Patterson had a good game too, so it wasn't like a perfect run defense day. But Najee Harris finished with 13 carries for 19 yards, and he also had that catch on the final drive on third down where he did not step out of bounds, and so the clock's running. And so he stepped into Lucas Oil Stadium, ran out of the tunnel, flipping the double birds, and wanted to be the villain. So he got to be the villain today, just the villain didn't win.
Do we know why he was flipping double birds? Does Najee Harris have a thing against Lucas Oil Stadium or the Colts fans or Colts in general? What?
I don't know.
Why?
I would love to know why that is. I'm guessing he must have been really confident that they were going to run like crazy on this team that allowed, all those rushing yards for 2 weeks and then didn't against the Bears. This kind of thing, though, is like if you're going to do that, like I'm all for trash talk. It's just like you have to back it up, though, especially when you're in someone else's building. And so,
and especially the double birds. The double birds is like it's excessive.
Oh yeah, at the right when the camera's on him and he's on the video board, it's that was a lot, and it didn't turn out well for him.
I'm currently perusing the social medias, trying to figure out. I don't see anything. What could he possibly be that upset about? Anyway, that's a good villain. It's a good villain. It's rare. Normally, the villain of the game for us is like a Colts player who had a rough game. It's rare that we get an actual villain, but Nate's pointing out there was an actual villain today, like straight up, like just going for it, full on Joker. Except the Joker gives Batman trouble because he's sometimes successful. Najee Harris was, outside of one catch, was not very successful today.
Yeah, this was more like Eli Apple levels of being the villain.
Unsung hero of the game. This is always a good one. I think there's a lot of them in this game, actually. Too many to count. We might have to give some bonus unsung heroes of the game. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, there are a lot of these. I'm going to give this one to Shane Steichen. I was out, met up with some Pittsburgh writers day before. I've got a lot of friends on that beat, and we're talking through this matchup, and it just, with all the injuries that were piling up for the Colts late in the week, just felt like a game the Steelers should win. On paper, the Steelers should come in here as a 3-0 team that, had some injuries, but had what felt like the means, especially on defense, to take care of this beaten up team with a young quarterback. And the Steelers writers mentioned that like the one thing that would change it would be if Shane Steichen can whip up something that Mike Tomlin doesn't see coming and just win that matchup. And that's exactly what ended up happening, where it came out and they got exactly what the Steelers have shown to be this season, which is a heavy cover 3 team that has a deep safety to try to just take away the most explosive play there is, but leave the middle of the field fairly open. And then on third downs is when they're going to switch to man and pretty much build this so that TJ Watt's going to wreck it and you're going to throw into man coverage and it's just not going to work. And what Shane Steichen did is he found a way to just double TJ Watt all the time. So they were able to take him out of the game. I think I saw some, I have to go look it up. I think TJ Watt had a super quiet game. I'm not sure if he even
2 tackles, no quarterback hits, no sacks.
Yeah. And again, that's against a Colts offense that, while they did play conservatively at times, they in this game. Like there were opportunities and to wreck it. And then Joe Flacco's in there, he's the immobile quarterback, and they didn't let TJ Watt wreck it. And then not only that, but they did a great job of going right at what the Steelers were not built to do. And so on the other side of the line, so TJ Watt rushes off the offense's right side. So they were doubling in Braden Smith with the tight end. Off the left side with Bernard Ryman, the Steelers were playing Nick Herbig because Alex Highsmith, who's another very, very good pass rusher, was out today. Now, Nick Herbig is built to be, there was talk about moving him to inside linebacker based on size. He is a situational pass rusher who had to start on base downs based on some injuries, and they just ran right at him. And it was just a great way to get this team in a matchup that was so in their favor. Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson running that zone read time and again, and often handing off and putting Nick Herbig in that blender early on. And then just the adjustments that Shane showed throughout the game, I thought were great. I mean, it's hard when you game plan. It was clear that their game plan was to run Anthony more, like we've been asking for. So I liked most of those calls. We'll get into one I didn't like, but I've been asking them to use, or I've been saying I think they should use Anthony for what he can currently do really well, which is running. And he had 3 carries for 24 yards, and it was like 2 for 25 before that one where he was gimpy. But then to game plan around that mobile quarterback, and now Joe Flacco's stepping in. So you throw out all that quarterback run, throws out the lanes that Jonathan Taylor's going to have, and they just adjusted really well to call a lot of passing plays seamlessly, put Joe Flacco in some good situations of just winning matchups with just hunting for mismatches, I should say, for Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs. They were able to spring Drew Ogletree open for a wide open touchdown. So I thought Steichen really brought it today, really got them back to being, we know he's always hunting for explosives, and he's really good at that. But I thought he blended that really well with just finding ways to stay on the field between some of these man beater, zone beater concepts for Pittman and Downs, leaning into that run game early, running Richardson some. The reason I'm not putting him as the hero is the only one thing I have to put against Shane today was, and I don't know if this is the place to get into it, but the Anthony Richardson injury, I don't blame him for that. That was, you run him and he needs to slide in that moment. But when he came back out of the tunnel and they put him, or they came back into the game, they ran him on the very first play when he's dealing with a hip injury. And I just didn't think that was, we're talking about calculated risks, taking the right risks to run him. And so that was really surprising to see them do that. But, every coach has at least one call that they want back. So I'm going to, that was kind of one blemish on Steichen. But otherwise, I think he went up against what's considered a great defensive mind in Mike Tomlin, who's done this forever. And I thought he just thoroughly won that matchup.
So is that call the unsung villain of the game for you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with that call. That's a good way to narrow it down. Just that specific decision to run him at the goal line with at least a bruised hip? I mean, it just seems like one of those things that was happening fast where he came back, he said he was okay, but okay to be on the field is a little different than seeing how he's going to move when he's on the field versus setting it up for a hit. And that specific call to have him run up the middle, I mean, he's either it's got to be perfectly blocked to break through into the end zone, or what's likely to happen is a very physical tackle at the goal line. And so luckily, it's like Anthony kind of felt it not working well. Like he said, he just immediately felt like his hip was off, and he slid and took himself out of it. So Anthony kind of saved that from being something worse. But I just really was cringing at the thought of him taking another shot at that hip just a couple plays after injuring it. And it seemed like that got the message through, because it was like right after that's when they, Anthony was ready to come back. He had his helmet on. He looked like he was a possibility to come back in the game, and they didn't want to risk it, which I think ultimately it was the right decision. But it took a scary moment with that play call at the goal line to get to that point.
Yeah, no one said that explicitly after the game, but I did think that played a big role in why they didn't put him back in the game. Steichen trusted him. He said, I'm good to go back in. So he was thinking like good to call whatever. And Richardson ended up, feeling something and going down. And I wonder if that was going on again, where it's like, okay, you're running, you came running out of the tunnel. We saw you jog on the sideline. You're doing all these knee bends. That's great. But it's kind of already burned us once. Let's not burn it again, especially when we've got such a big lead. Also, this kind of goes into my.
Well, I was just going to say, I thought that was a moment they should have just let Flacco and Jonathan Taylor finish off that drive. I mean, we know points were so important. They needed, and Anthony Richardson, when he's right, is a great cheat code in the red zone, but they had an opportunity to just let a couple more plays go with this offense. And that gives you an entire new sequence of time to, when the defense is on the field, to look at Anthony, have a conversation with him, get a sense for what is it? Is it, is it just painful? Is it, is it okay? Like, I just thought they really rushed into that and rushed into something that was just kind of scary and not calculated. So it was almost like the good thing with Shane is it feels like he realized really quickly, like you were playing with fire here. And that's when that soon after that decided, not to even bring him back in the game at all.
Kind of goes into my unsung villain. I think I'm going to stick with the referees here, not just for the hit on Richardson that they said was incidental after he slid to the ground and not hard. Like, can we stop officiating mobile big quarterbacks different from normal quarterbacks? I feel like that was a penalty if it was a different player. I just do. Fitzpatrick hit him after he slid. He made contact to his head and neck. Like,
yeah.
Especially after the ticky-tack call you get on Isaiah Land, where Land can't do anything else. But there were a lot of calls like that too. Like, we didn't ask about these Incidentally, the Isaiah Land thing, they said that he landed with his body weight on Justin Fields, which I guess fine, but I don't know what else he could have done. He didn't hit him in the head. He put his face mask in his chest. I don't know. Anyway, also talking to the referees is not fun because they just quote rules to you. They don't actually explain what they're thinking.
Yeah, this is going to be a little quick side tangent for me. I think referees should have to give press conferences after every game. I think it would honestly bring a lot of nice accountability to it, and it would you got to be able to explain the decisions that you're making. We make everyone else in the game do that. Every player, every coach, and some of these calls, rulings decide these games, and it's like you need to, whenever you make these, when you make a call, you need to be willing to stand up and explain why you made it, and not just, like you said, and not just cite a rule. We have to have an ability to ask follow-ups, push them on stuff, and they never get pushed on anything. And then if any player,
if you ask a follow-up, like today's pool report, I asked a follow-up on the Richardson hit, and they said literally the exact same sentence to me that they just said.
Yeah, they're not conditioned to having to answer for anything, so they mostly just don't. And what's annoying is then because we don't have officials to ask on this stuff, we have to ask the coaches and the players. And as much as they can do is say, well, this is what the ref told us, but they can't criticize or they're going to get fined. Well, then let's be able to ask the people who made the calls then, who can then either stand behind it and say, with their chest, this is why we made this, and I'm not going to back down. Or maybe they can admit some fault sometimes. I don't think it's the end of the world if they come out and say, yeah, I thought I saw this. This has really happened. Yes, it would get fans ablaze and all of that. That seems to be what they're afraid of, is it would expose sometimes bad officiating. It would bring that more to light, make that more of a storyline. But I don't know. It's a weird feeling to me where we make everyone else answer for, someone who has a role in the game. That doesn't really apply to anything else that happens in this sport.
Yeah, that's my unsung villain. We gotta get back to the unsung hero. We're kind of dipping in and out on these categories. Colts offensive line. Can you talk about the Colts offensive line through the first 4 games of this season? 6 sacks allowed. JT is averaging 4.8 yards a carry and has rushed for 349 yards already, despite facing, I think the Bears are probably going to end up being a good run defense. Pittsburgh's probably going to end up being a good run defense. I don't know where Houston is, but I feel like a D'Amico Ryans team is going to end up being a good run defense. And then today, just say what?
I was just going to say they've only faced one bad run defense. That was Packers.
Mm-hmm. And just they've been really good. They've gotten JT going. They're not giving up a lot of pressure. I know there's some. It's the Steelers. There's going to be pressure. 2 sacks against the Steelers is good. And this time they did it without Ryan Kelly. Shout out to Tanner Bortolini, the rookie from Wisconsin, out of the 4th round pick. This was the first time he's ever played a snap in the NFL. And he went up against – now, Cam Hayward did have a sack and a half, but those first couple drives, if you looked at those zone rushes, they were getting a lot of push. And Bortolini gets thrown into it, throw one out for Braden Smith, who I think is battling some knee soreness. Probably will be all season, but he, and then I'm going to throw Mo. I know Mo Cox isn't an offensive lineman because he can sometimes catch the ball, but he's mostly offensive lineman. And the parts I was watching before Richardson got hurt and kind of changed my day around, so I couldn't watch as closely as I'd like to. They were doubling Watt a lot of Mo Cox. So shout out to all those guys. The Colts offensive line is probably not getting enough credit here through the first couple weeks of the season because there's other stuff to talk about. But just very, very, very good game from them against a very good defense.
Well, they are getting talked about in this podcast because that's 2 straight weeks they're the unsung hero of the game. So, these guys are doing a great job. And it's shout out to Tanner Bortolini. He could have been the unsung hero because that was hard. It was a midweek practice injury for Ryan Kelly on Wednesday. Wednesday is the day that they do their heavy run install. So he steps in on Thursday and Friday, much lighter practices, and it's his whole role in the run game as a center is working these combo blocks with Quentin Nelson and Will Fries, and you're trying to, you're going against the Steelers. You're trying to do that against Cam Hayward. Like it would not have been shocking if we came out and saw him and he got totally exposed by Cam Hayward as a rookie in his first game, but that didn't happen. I think it just speaks to the overall room right now is just really healthy. Like ever since they moved from Chris Strasser to the offensive line coach they have now, whose name is escaping me.
Tony Sperano Jr.
Yeah, Sperano Jr. I remember his I was going to say the son of the former Dolphins head coach. Tony Sperano Jr. is
not Tony Soprano.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a mob ball.
Everyone is balling out. Everyone in that line is playing to their capabilities, and some of them are dealing with injuries, and so they're not 100%. But like they're getting the job done every week right now, and it's absolutely critical. If they had offensive line issues with what they're dealing with Anthony Richardson in the passing game, I mean, this season would be a disaster. So in a lot of ways, they have saved the season, I think.
Fun fact, Tanner Bortolini found out he was starting this morning. For sure. A couple hours before the game. He did get first-team reps in practice, but they were not sure that he was going to start until this morning. He found out a couple hours before the game. Played pretty well. That moves us on to the number of the day. We were kind of getting into the interlude. Do you have your number of the day ready?
I don't. I'm trying to look for it.
I was going to go with Najee Harris. You were all over that. And I was going to go with TJ Watt, but we alluded to that as well. So I think instead, overall, I'm just going to go with 18.8. It's Michael Pittman's yards per reception today. That's pretty explosive.
Yeah.
And when you get Michael Pittman Jr. doing this, like right now, teams are probably trying to take away Alec Pierce. A.D. Mitchell still not doing anything. 3 targets today, no catches. Pittman starting to make plays down the field. That's going to give teams some pause on what they can do with Pierce. It'll open things back up for Pierce, I think, because I know he's a high volume receiver, but 18.8 yards per reception with a couple of explosive plays, it's pretty big for this offense.
Yeah, it was a great example for Pittman to show that he is more than just this short depth of target volume guy that I think he's often painted as, because that is how he's produced recently. But again, we don't bring it up as much as with Alec Pierce because there's such a clear correlation between Alec's game and the strong arm quarterbacks. But he's been hurt on the upside by playing with guys who don't push the ball down the field the past 2 years, whether it's Gardner Minshew, Matt Ryan, Sam Ehlinger. So like today was a good example where it started with Anthony Richardson and then, with that explosive 32-yard gain in the first drive. But then when it went to Joe Flacco, it didn't change a lot for Pittman because it's still a strong arm quarterback and they still can push the ball down the field. And that's where the zones are right now. And he really came through on that. So my number of the day is going to be kind of weird. Nothing is totally jumping out to me. So I'm just going to say my number of the day is 5, which is the number of total return yards that the Colts had on kicks and punts today.
Ooh.
Pretty non-existent. That unit is not doing really anything. I mean, part of it is we're learning that the dynamic kickoff is not very dynamic in the NFL. So
they should have made a touchback further.
Exactly. So that's not all their fault, but this is my opportunity to talk about this decision to make Anthony Gould inactive right after last week when he didn't return that ball before the 2-minute warning. And just like I said, I point out last week, I wanted him to return more of these punts. Like if you're going to have a spot on game day, on the game day roster and you have one job to be a punt returner, you got to make use of that role. So they seem to see it the same way. They benched him today. The problem or the concerning part to me is they put Josh Downs back there at punt return, and Downs did this some late last year. he can do it. I think he's pretty good at it. He would be at least like an average NFL return man. But we saw today just how critical Josh Downs is to this offense. And not just having Josh Downs out there, the fresh version, the one that is over the ankle injury, the high ankle sprain, or the knee issue that was going on last season. They don't want to get him to a point where he's playing through a knee injury and not able to cut or accelerate, because when he is at his full self, like he is the short range, he is the money man on third down. When they get man coverage or when they face zone coverage, you need someone to settle into a zone. Like Josh is a critical piece of this offensive operation. So to put him back at punt return and not really get anything out of it either, just 5 total return yards today. Like they need to figure something out there to not expose him, while also finding some way to get something out of that group, because right now when this offense gets the ball in short fields, I feel really good about what they can do. They're just, I don't know, it's just interesting to me that they spent a 5th round pick on a return man, and we're quarter way into the season, and it's in a weird kind of confusing spot at the moment.
Yeah. Yep. That brings us to the fun parts of the podcast. We're going to start off with the game day observation. My game day observation is simple. I always have lots of thoughts on national anthems. I always love national anthems. I prefer them to be simpler. I'm just going to be honest. It was a saxophone national anthem today. Straight sax. And it was pretty darn good. Not going to lie. Love the instrumental. Really love the saxophone national anthem. I don't have much more there. Just like them.
Yeah, the sax national anthems always seem to knock it out of the park. That's a good one. Mine's not super wild. It's just there are a good number of Steelers fans there. But the interesting thing is that like Greg Norwell,
a lot.
They were totally taken out of the game for so much of it. Like the Steelers were doing absolutely nothing, and so you didn't really feel that until late in the game, once they were to launch that comeback, especially on defense, when they're starting to make plays on defense, they kind of took over. So it was just a weird atmosphere where it was like half a Colts home game for the part that they dominated, and then half a road game for the part where they were struggling. It's just a very confusing mix of everything. But that's where that fed into the villain, I think, a little bit, where Najee Harris comes out, they're waving the terrible towels, and they sent those fans and they sent Najee Harris home, not super happy. So
he flipped off his own fan.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's what it was. That's not about the Colts. He saw all the terrible towels out there and decided to flip them off. So, yeah.
Okay, here we go. 3 football things that gave me joy. Nate, what are you doing? Are you doing joy or are you terribly vexed today?
I'm going to do some vexing. Why not?
Nate's terribly vexed. I like that this is a new part of the podcast. I go with joy. Nate goes with terribly vexed. These are sometimes very small things that give us joy. Number 1 football thing that gave me joy. The Indianapolis Colts today on their kickoff coverage unit had 2 players who are listed at defensive tackle on their kickoff coverage unit. Eddie Adebawore and now Adam Gotsis, who has played special teams for a long time elsewhere. It's not surprising to see him there. 2 defensive tackles on the same unit is not something you see very often. It's something I've been hoping for as players get more and more athletic. Adebawore is definitely part of this. I'm looking now. Neither of them made a tackle. Sadly, I blame the kicking it out of the end zone. But 2 defensive tackles on kick coverage, which means we're not that far from 2 defensive tackles playing gunner. I rest my case. Give me big special teams people.
Joel's fever dream. We're getting close to it. That is fun. So my first football thing that left me terribly vexed. We've touched on it, but the body weight rule, I don't like that. I don't understand that. I remember when it got put in, 2018, I think was the year it got put in. I was covering the Lions, and we had officials come in training camp and talk to us and explain it. And I remember it's just really going at that and trying to get some explanation. They just said, you just can't land your body weight on the quarterback. And it's like, well, doesn't there have to be something about, like, doesn't he need an alternate landing spot first? Like on that spot where Isaiah Land takes Justin Fields to the ground, like you can tell him, hey, mid sack, you're supposed to roll your entire body weight. You may roll onto another player and hurt some other player or get yourself hurt doing that. Like the idea that this is supposed to be easily controlled for like a defensive end who comes screaming off the edge. And like there's some parts of the game that are just kind of like that in the name of safety that are understandable. Like the hits to the head, like there's some roughing the passer stuff and it drives people crazy, but I understand it. Like you just have to get to a point where you're not going after the quarterback's head. And it's not the easiest, but it's at least there is a workaround to it. I think there's training and technique to it. It is very hard to train yourself to sack a quarterback in a moment like that where you actually pick him up from low, like he did avoid the helmet to helmet type thing, and roll your body last second midair and also figure out where the quarterback's body exactly is going in this. Like,
well, it's a mobile quarterback. Well, it's a mobile quarterback who's hard to sack on top of it.
And it also doesn't account for the size of the player making the sack. And so like Isaiah Land is a very large human being. Like the idea that like he can contort his body midair, it's going to look worse when he lands on someone than if Chris Lamons did it. It's in the referees, when they talk to us, they say, oh, that's not really what it's about. Like it's, if a small player lands on the same penalty, yeah, but the small player is not going to make the same impact. He's going to be able to do something with his body to not look like a full land on the quarterback thing. So I don't know. I remember one time I was asking a defensive player about this on the Lions, and he just went on a rant about how it's a rule built for the breadwinners. It is just a rule built to say we like quarterbacks and we don't like pass rushers. And the only takeaway you could have to Isaiah Land if you sat him down and said, hey, this is what you should do different, is you're pretty much telling him, like, be worse at sacking. That was too good of a sack. Just you hit him too hard. You wrapped him up too well. You landed too well. You need to like have a crappier sack where you just like trip the guy. That's really the only takeaway. It's just unfortunate for a guy who might be facing a fine now, when he's trying to just make one play in his one moment to get out there, having not made any money in this league. And they're just going to take money away from him because he sacked really well. And that seems to run counter to everything else we do with sacking really well in this game.
Yeah, the rule sucks. It's a dumb rule. Yeah. I'm all for quarterback safety, but that's a dumb rule. Number 2 football thing that gave me joy: Tanner Bortolini and Quentin Nelson fighting their butts off to recover the fumble, Anthony Richardson's fumble on the play he got hurt. Fumbles, recovering fumbles. If you look at, most people say fumble recoveries are luck. Basically, they're not really luck though. They're effort. And if you go back and look, like I remember I was looking through binoculars, Quentin Nelson, like throwing his body in there to get that ball and knocking somebody away. I couldn't see what Bortolini was doing, but it's not easy. And once you're under there, you're getting, people are ripping at the ball. They're trying to get it until the refs pull them off. Fighting for the football on the fumble, always fun to see, always good to watch. Like a quintessential football thing, fighting for the football thing that gave me joy.
Yeah, it's a little skill of Quentin Nelson's. I remember the play in Baltimore last year where he's like batting the ball away from other defenders and Gardner Minshew fumbled. Michael Pittman Jr. ends up landing on it and they end up pulling that game out. Like both times were kind of felt like that. Like if they don't hold the ball there, they might have lost this game. Like they needed to build a double-digit lead and kind of hold on as these injuries mounted up and the Steelers started to come back like that. It's a very small moment that ends up kind of having a huge impact. My second football thing that left me terribly vexed is Anthony Richardson needs to start sliding, and he needs to stop looking at this as if you slide, that's not playing football. That's just his approach right now. And look, I understand it. He acknowledged this today, that he knows the conversation around, and he knows that when this happens and he's out of the game, that everyone's going to ramp back up the injury-prone conversation. And that's followed him his whole life. And some of it's fair and some of it has not been fair over the years. And he doesn't like it at all. And who would? I mean, that really goes to some kind of core piece of who you are. And I think that's playing into the way he wants to finish these runs and some of it is just, he's excited. It's the same thing that happened with some of those accuracy misses when he leaves his feet. He gets excited when he sees like a smaller defender that he can run over in the open field. But again, time and place. If you're trying to run someone over at the goal line, there's payoff to running him over and getting 2 more yards. It's a touchdown. Obviously, there's first moments where you're trying to do that for a first down, game on the line type things like that. When you have a first down, though, and you're running for like 19 yards, maybe just accept it being a 17-yard run. And slide. And so, like, the thing is that like some of the best running quarterbacks have a great slide move. That's Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson from their baseball days. That's how Russell Wilson was able to be a runner. You see Justin Fields, another baseball background. He didn't used to slide. He used to kind of try to be that tough player. But today he showed like he was one to slide a lot. So just quarterbacks, like, my thing is, like, if you want to prove like you're a tough physical player, there are some moments to do it. But the bigger thing is like, just the more you slide in appropriate situations, the more you'll stay on the field, the more durable you are, the more you can run and keep doing it and playing more games. That is the biggest testament I think you can make, not just barreling someone over in the open field to turn a 17-yard run into a 19-yard run. So just a small thing for a really young quarterback that I think mostly has had the right approach to a lot of what he's trying to do out there. Just some very bad luck, but that's where he's got to help himself out a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a big thing considering the injuries now. Every time he's left a game, it's been because of a running play. And like you said, Fields today slid a lot, ran a lot, slid a lot, ended up coming out of the game healthy. Number 3 football thing that gave me joy. I'm going to give a shout out to our editor, Nat Newell, on this because he said this a lot of times. Why is it that every time the offense snaps a ball over the head of the quarterback, no one blocks anybody? If there's a fumbled snap or a snap that goes over, it's like I feel like 9 times out of 10 when you watch that play, the defensive line looks like that play against the Bears when all the offensive linemen are falling on the ground and the defensive linemen are just running through. It's like as soon as it's like, I don't know, it's like a center says a cuss word or something, and the whole offensive line is like, what do we do? And it was the same thing on the final drive. They snapped the ball over Justin Fields' head. There's people there immediately. He's scrambling out of pressure the entire game, making moves, running stuff. He's got nowhere to go on that because for whatever reason, if your center snaps the ball over your quarterback's head, it means the rest of the offensive line just doesn't block that play for whatever reason. Very weird.
Yeah, it almost comes off like it's either like the center snapped it and no one's aware that he did because it's too early, or it's like the quarterback had him snap it too early and they're like, well, this is on you. So good luck. But would you say is that a football thing that gave you joy or left you vexed or both?
Oh, joy. Just joy. Love it.
Okay.
Like, almost don't need it explained. It's hilarious.
It is kind of funny. I could have used it for my vexing, but I have another one for my third football thing that left me terribly vexed is when you see the number 84 at running back. Very odd. That was Cordarrelle Patterson. I think that's it was Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yep.
But seeing him in the backfield, I mean, that's Cordarrelle's game. He's kind of always been this sort of, hybrid player. But, like, all of a sudden he's their best running back, and that's not just me saying that. That's what Zaire Franklin tweeted out, that he runs harder than Najee Harris when he said that Najee Harris is soft. But just like that visual is so odd to see number 84 taking a handoff. And then when he actually does it well, because, like, it's one thing when you ask a wide receiver to do something a wide receiver shouldn't do, like block Tyquan Lewis at the goal line. And then we go, yeah, that looks kind of like a wide receiver trying to do that. It says like Cordarrelle Patterson, it's leaving me vexed. I'm like impressed, though, on his part because He's number 84 lining up in the backfield on a day when Najee Harris is averaging 1.5 yards a carry, and he goes and he averages 7.2 yards a carry. He's like running up the middle and chunk gains right and left, and it's like number 84 lined up in the tailback spot. So very, very odd visual.
Yeah. The number stuff, I like that they're single digit numbers, but is this our old head? Is this our old head era where we're just like, listen, some things are supposed to be the way they were when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like the numbers. That moves us out of the interlude. We're getting back into this. We're getting back into the stuff from the game, the serious stuff. The Colts won today, so we're doing too much credit, too little credit. Who's going to get too much credit for today's football game?
Too much credit today. I forgot about this topic. Too much credit today. Oh, I think it's probably pretty appropriate. I don't know. Do you have one on top of your?
Can I give this to Joe Flacco after also giving him hero of the game? Is that okay?
Yeah, because you could say he's the hero of the game and maybe not the greatest. They should bench Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I think that there's a way to look at it where it's like, well, Flacco fixed the offense, but 2 of the touchdown drives were mostly Richardson. I mean, I get it. Like Flacco threw the touchdown pass. It was a great throw. The one and downs was a really great throw. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe just dial it down a little bit. It was still 6.5 yards per attempt. It was 16 to 26. There were some misses in there. There were some bad misses in there. I don't know that I want to watch him play. What is it? The next 13 games? I don't know about that. Good guy to have as a backup. I don't know if I would be like Joe Flacco, put the Colts on his back and yoke them up the hill to a victory. I don't know. That might be a little too far.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. I mean, it was a really good game for a backup. But let's keep it at that.
Also, it was really bad. It was really bad in the middle part of the game.
Yeah,
it was really. bad.
The offense died for half the game, so it looked like a backup. There were times it looked like a backup quarterback, and then there were times it looked like a very good backup quarterback. But that's still kind of what it's at. My too much credit, now that I've thought this over a little bit, I'm going to say the Colts defense, just as a whole. Give them a ton of credit for the fact that what they fought through, being down 5 defensive starters. That's
everybody's. Yeah.
What's that?
Because everybody's hurt.
Yeah, everybody's hurt, and so it's like they did a great job, dealing with that, and they were really up against it. But mostly today, they got 2 turnovers that were, heads up plays to land on the ball when they came out. But I thought that was more offensive futility from the Steelers. Justin Fields has got to just eat that play and go down. So good call by Gus Bradley to blitz Chris Lamont. Good job by Lamont to kind of chase a very athletic player. But that was some just disastrous quarterback pocket management. And then the other one was similar to that, where give Nick Cross credit for catching up to George Pickens on the sideline, but he's trying to make a physical hit up on his shoulders, and he was not going for the ball. And George Pickens has the ball in his right arm instead of his left arm, where if he fumbles, it goes out of bounds. So that was more the Steelers kind of messing up. And then overall, just the overall day, they gave up 404 yards. They gave up, 24 points. That's fine, I guess. But again, that's the most points the Steelers have scored this season. And it wasn't a matter of the Colts offense was not putting them in a lot of great positions. I think the Colts offense won this game. Now that, again, give the defense credit for the fact that they overcame a lot. They didn't get they didn't come out and just get steamrolled like they what happened against the Packers and the Texans run game. So they fit the moment. They kind of did what they needed to do. But overall, I just thought Justin Fields finished with 9.2 yards per attempt. and also ran 10 times for 55 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I think they kind of got owned on a lot of plays by Justin Fields and George Pickens. Now they handled Najee Harris super well. That was good. And then, they were on the money when the Steelers did put the ball on the ground. But I'd be willing to give them credit for they're hanging in there. They're overcoming some injuries. They're playing in a way that you can play around and win with if you have great offense. But I wouldn't say that they had to survive this game. And when it went from they're up 17-0 to it got dicey there. And credit to them for, again, like you said, the Steelers are snapping the ball over the head of Justin Fields late in the game. Najee Harris is not stepping out of bounds and they're losing clock. It was right there to where we were pretty close to having a conversation about how they were the villain. If they did not win this game, it would have been just a major collapse by the defense. So they didn't collapse, so no need to crush them for it. But I wouldn't be giving them I wouldn't be thinking that they necessarily fixed everything this week, including the run defense. At least mobile quarterbacks have given them problems, especially quarterback draws. I remember Lamar Jackson did it, Jalen Hurts did it, Justin Fields twice near the end zone. So it was an okay day for the defense, but they weren't facing a juggernaut offense. And I think at moments the Steelers did look like a juggernaut offense in the second half.
Too little credit. Who is getting too little credit for this Indianapolis Colts win today?
I think I'm going to go with Jim Bob Cooter. I think that's going to be an easy answer whenever the Colts have a really good offensive game because, he's just easy to forget about because he's not the play caller. He's not the guy answering after the game for the offensive decisions. That's Shane Steichen, and Shane deserves a lot of credit. But if you hear people talk about Jim Bob Cooter's role behind the scenes, he just works like an absolute madman. And he draws up all these designs. This guy's office just painted with these play designs. And so what I've always thought was his best trait was looking at individual players and building out their roles and using them in ways that are different, a little different than they've been used before, but are going to put them in a great position to make a big play. He's more I think a good antidote to Shane, who's a great play designer, but Jim Bob, I think, really makes it about accentuating the stars. And so they ran an angle route for Jonathan Taylor that I just love that they did that. Finding Jonathan Taylor a role in the passing game is essential because he's got to be on the field right now. They can't run into what they ran into in Green Bay. So that angle route for Jonathan Taylor to take the first down, that's a Jim Bob Cooter special where he did that all the time for Theo Riddick when I was in Detroit. And it just puts linebackers in an absolute blender when they want to go in man coverage. It's this easy man beater for an athletic, a really fast running back. So that was a moment. And then just overall, I think the offense, like I said, is they were the ones who saved the day today. And so I think Jim Bob should get some credit for that, especially they as a staff looked at the things that they weren't doing, things we've been urging them to do, such as really force feed Michael Pittman Jr., rely more on the run game, draw up some design runs for Anthony Richardson. They did all that stuff today. And so I think Shane deserves a lot of credit, and I think Jim Bob deserves some credit too.
Not that they listened to us. They're not getting their ideas from us.
No, they most definitely aren't.
Too much credit, them getting their ideas for us. Too little credit for me, Jonathan Taylor. He's very good. He's been very good. This, I think, is where I'm going to talk about the fact that, they decided it was a good idea after losing Zach Moss in free agency, which is a very understandable decision by Moss. I think he's getting pretty decent workload with Cincinnati so far. Let's look that up real quick while we're doing stuff on. Yeah, 48 carries so far. He's the starter for the Bengals. He actually, 48 carries. So he's actually started for the Bengals, averaging 12 carries a game. He had to go. But this idea that they didn't need to sign anybody because Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson had a good game against the Steelers last year.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor is really, really good. He's been really good. He's got 349 yards through the first 3 games. He's averaging 4.8 yards per carry. He looks great. Every time somebody else is in there, it's very obvious. I'm sorry. I don't know any other way to say it. But Jonathan Taylor's getting too little credit because of how much he does for this offense. He can create stuff when it's not there, which is important when Anthony Richardson is out. That brings us to the last piece here, the last 2 things. Takes to throw away, 1 to go on. We always end this way. It's the best way to end the podcast. We'll start with 1 to throw away. Nate, what is something that people are talking about right now from this game that it's just not going to play a role through the rest of the season?
This one I'm going to keep short and sweet since we've kind of gotten into it already, but anybody who's saying that they should stick with Joe Flacco at quarterback, throw it away. Bad take, not happening, not going to be the consideration, no chance, not a prayer. Chase Daniel said it today, so it's like it's more than – I'm not just trying to quote straw man people on X, but it's like it just shouldn't be out there. It's like Anthony Richardson, first of all, had a really good game. Shane Steichen said he was on fire. And that's kind of what it was. He was 3 of 4, 71 yards, 116 rating, and had the 3 carries for 24 yards. And it was even better than that. Low and alone was the one we pulled up Gimpy on. It was just like chunk play after chunk play, playing exactly the way that we've been wanting him to play. Where like he did miss a couple of – he missed 1 layup, I guess. He was 3 of 4, missed one layup throw that was there to – I think that was to Josh Downs. It was either Downs or Pittman. But it's like you can live with that. That is not like that. That's why he needs reps, is to like build chemistry with these guys, to build the mechanics, to work through the things that we spent all week talking about with his accuracy, where he really got serious about it this week and looked at all of his mechanics and tried to find a way to, in his words, play less excited. Like it's all good, healthy type of growth. And for him, what I said is like, he's just got to avoid – my main thing with Anthony is he's got to avoid the turnovers. So he did that today. Again, like Flacco played fine, played well for a backup, but that's all that's going on here. And you could just tell by them not bringing Anthony back in, it wasn't because they thought, oh, let's play Joe Flacco, he's better. That really underscores how important he is to this entire thing, which is we're not going to risk an injury to him. So that take is not relevant this season.
1 to throw away is tough this week. I felt like this game played out pretty much the way, there's a lot of stuff that you could kind of see coming with this game, I think. I'm really struggling with this one today. Maybe Latu only having a quarterback hit in it. I mean, I don't think he's going to have many tackles, but at some point, all these near misses he's gonna start getting home more often. There was a lot of near misses. They keep playing all these quarterbacks who are super mobile and escapable in the pocket. At some point later on this season, he's gonna get some better targets, some more stationary targets, and those sack numbers are gonna go up. So that's a simple one. I don't know if anybody thought about it a lot. I just thought he was in the backfield a lot and didn't get anything to show for it really. Latu is going to be a bigger factor than he was in this game. That brings us to the last one to go on. I'll let you get the last word. I'm gonna start this off. I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to ever be able to be like consistently be on the field. I don't know if this is going to end up being a blip on this season. It didn't sound like it was this hip pointer was too major. Maybe he's back next week and plays against Jacksonville and plays the rest of the season. I don't think there's any way to know that. I do think, though, that because of the way his career has started, that no matter what happens, we're going to be talking about injuries with him the whole time he's here, whether that's a long time, whether that's a short time. This is just a part of the story now. And fair or not, I mean, obviously he's a good runner. He's not really a great passer at this point from what we've seen so far this season. We're going to be talking about him running too, because every time he's been knocked out of a game, it's been on the run. this storyline is not going to go away. It's just going to be there. This is where we are. This is the life we're in.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunately very true. My one to go on is that I think that Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs are back, and they're here to stay. And if you look at the two of them, obviously there was the factor of Anthony Richardson's accuracy issues, but there were explanations for why neither of those guys had done much yet. Obviously, with Josh Downs, he missed 2 games. And then he was back, and he told me tonight that he was really just testing his ankle out and getting acclimated last week. They wanted to have a very small role for him, but kind of almost have him as a threat, as an element more than, than to really lean on him to produce. This week is the freshest he's felt yet, but he said he's not 100% yet. But this is the freshest version we've seen of him since first half of last season, before the knee flared up. And this is the one he looked like in training camp. And he right now looks, at least for the matchups he's getting in the slot, pretty uncoverable for most of these guys who are not the top tier corners in the league, the guys that often will play in the slot. So I think he's going to be here to stay. And then Michael Pittman Jr., his track record has always suggested he was going to do this. He hadn't done it yet. And, and there's something to be said for maybe, the style that's allowed him to produce has been, like Gardner Minshew and RPO. It's been there is a level of accuracy. You obviously have to hit Pittman he has to be able to catch it before he can make plays. But I just think like they're going to find ways to get them the ball. They're going to. It may not produce the same exact way it did today, which was a tremendous game. Like they're going to have some misses with Anthony Richardson, but like that was the part of the offense that I felt like we didn't give, that wasn't getting enough credit for the upside of it. Is that when you ask about like how is this team going to stay on the field? How are they going to fix their time possession issues? Well, they got to get the ball to those two and have them carry it. And like today, I think was just the start of them doing it, because I think what they both showed last year and Pittman before last year even is that they're about as bankable kind of week to week as you get for players in this league. So I think this is just the start of the two of them getting healthy. Pittman over the quad bruise and some calf and back issues. Josh Downs over the ankle sprain. Doesn't mean they can't get hurt again, but like for as long as they're fresh and they're out there, I think today was just the start of them really having nice seasons for this team.
That is it for the Colts Cover-2 podcast, First Impressions edition. I'm Joel A. Erickson. This is Nate Atkins. We'll be following everything to do with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor and Kenny Moore and Tyquan Lewis and Kwity Paye and some of the other injuries that the Colts are dealing with. That's a lot, and I missed some as the week goes on. But for the moment, enjoy the Steelers win.